right, good evening or good morning, everybody. It looks like we're hitting that 7 p.m. SGT mark if you are dialing in from Asia. Once again, I am your host, Gene Mariama. I am the VP of Marketing for InvestaX and iSwap. And today we're going to be tackling a very important issue that we've noticing in the RWA ecosystem. So as you all may have noticed, we're seeing more and more players entering the field and more L2s and network coming down the pipeline. So what does that mean exactly for building an expansive RWA ecosystem? And before we begin, I'd like to thank you all again for joining us here today, and as well as our esteemed panelists for taking their time to actually come in here and talk to the audience and discuss just how important or what is the importance of cross-chain compatibility for an expansive RWA ecosystem. Now, before we begin, I'd like to introduce our panelists. I'm pretty sure some of you have already seen us together before, which is not surprising as Kima Network and Mantra always co-marketing AMAs with iSwap and InvestaX. So without further ado, why don't we start with you, Julian?
Thanks, Gene. Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking time out of your day. Looks like we've nearly got 100 people here. Just a quick one on me. I'm co-founder, CEO of iSwap and InvestaX. We've been focusing on the real-world asset space, probably earliest in Asia back in 2018. And just focusing on iSwap, we wanted to build a liquidity solution for every RWA asset. So we embarked on a mission to build iSwap, which essentially it looks and feels like Uniswap, but it plugs into retail securities licenses and custody licenses so we can legally trade, legally pool real-world assets, but we welcome all investors. You just need a basic photo ID. You don't have to prove any net worth. So, we're super excited to be here today and talk more about the projects and cross-chain. Thank you, Jim.
All right, thanks for that warm introduction, Julian. And then up next, we have Bryan Benson. Maybe, Bryan, if you could give a little something to the audience for tonight.
Yeah, thanks for that, Gene. This is Bryan Benson here. I head up strategy and I'm an investor in Kima Network. Kima is a interoperability solution that allows projects, dApps, any sort of technology to benefit from cross-chain communication and value transfer. So we're able to bring value, liquidity from EVM chains, non-EVM chains, as well as non-chain assets. So we can integrate with bank accounts and do all sorts of neat stuff. So happy to be here, happy to support this discussion, which is super important to what we're doing at Kima. And thank you for having us.
All right. Thank you very much, Bryan, for that nice introduction. Up next, we have Nicholas Krapels.
Hey guys, this is Prof K from MentorChain. We're the leading RWA L1 in the space, and we're going to be debuting our blockchain by the end of the year. And we just announced that we're going to tokenize $500 million in Dubai, and we're hoping to become the ledger of record in the Middle East and beyond. So happy to be here.
All right. Thanks for the introduction, guys. Now, for everyone else that's just tuning in or hopping in, I'd like to thank you again for joining us tonight. And now we are about to begin our RWA panel number 5. So with the first question for our panelists here, how does cross-chain compatibility enhance interoperability and efficiency in managing real-world assets across different blockchain networks? Maybe we'll start with you, Julian, and then we'll have Bryan.
Okay,
Nicholas
maybe we can follow the same path. I think ultimately the end game for everybody is just being able to kind of interact any type of tokens with each other without kind of the headaches and the hassles of bridging and all of the steps involved. So not only kind of crypto and layer 2s but everything from, especially in the real world asset space. I think that's kind of one of the key goals or missions of the whole kind of industry, because when you think about real world assets on paper, they are typically not really transferable at all. And so digital format of those shares in terms of real world asset token, equity token or debt token or something like this, is already brings significant benefit, which we can talk about all those different benefits. But then having your real estate token, your venture capital token, and whatever, all being able to trade with each other is the ultimate end game. And that means that from a technology, at least protocol layer, solutions need to be built so that actually comes to fruition. And it's technically, I think, possible. It's probably just more of a timing issue. So I think that's where, that's the goal, right? Because the users don't want to worry about, wallets. Typically, I mean, I'm talking about the users as in like the super majority of the 8 billion people on Earth. They want to move value around and trade value. They want to feel safe. They don't really care about different types of wallets and different types of technology. And half the time, that's it. So I think ultimately that's kind of the goal. So we'll be seeing we're really interested from IXSwap's perspective. We started on Ethereum. We worked with Polygon because of the Ethereum challenges related to gas fees. And we wanted to be able to people to trade $1 of a real-world asset token. And if the gas fee was $2, that clearly wouldn't work out. So we went on Polygon, and now we're building on Base. And, we're speaking with the Mantra guys. We're speaking with multiple other blockchains to see how they can integrate over time. So I think the benefit is that you just have a much bigger marketplace because more things can interact with more things. That's kind of it.
All right. Thanks for that insights, Julian. How about anything from you, Bryan? Anything you want to chime in for that?
Yeah, I think this is a crucial conversation, as Julian said, in this real world asset space, and we have all these different sort of siloed ways of making these assets, right? And I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. The technology is advancing quickly with what Mantra is doing, with what some of the other layer ones are doing, and the layer twos. And there's a lot of opportunity, I would say, but at the end of the day, if you have, let's say, a T-bill on one chain, and you need liquidity on another chain, or you need to sell the T-bill on another chain to a buyer who has a big order, it's really not that easy to get the liquidity across there, right? And so that's what Kima is solving for. And I think there's a couple problems with the way it's currently being done. Is there's a heavy reliance on smart contracts, which when you're plugging it into new technologies, non-EVM chains, bank accounts, APIs, R3 Cordas, hyperledgers, these kinds of things, it's not always that easy to integrate on the smart contract level. But what Kima's done is abstracted away these complexities so that with a simple SDK, you're able to gain access to all of these different endpoints, as if they were on chain, and be able to trade them with instant liquidity. So this is, I think, some of the technology, and like Julian said, the technology is pretty much there. It's just now it's like a race to the solution, and a regulatory compliance sort of dance as well, I think. So it's pretty exciting to be a part of this space. If anyone wants to learn more about what Kima's doing, we're happy to share. Our SDK is open source, so you can always just check that out. But yeah, that's what I think. Interoperability is sort of the key to making this all work. And we've seen this in the traditional financial world for a long time, right? Like if you want to send money from Colombia, where I live, to Africa, it's got to go through somewhere else, and there's always all these hops, and that's not even that simple to do, right? And so I think with the technology that we're building, that some of the other people on this call are building, will eventually get there, and it'll be super simple, efficient, and near instantaneous, so that liquidity is composable, and you can have it wherever you need it. So.
All right. Thanks for sharing that, Bryan. Yeah, Nicholas, anything you want to chime in?
It's really good stuff. I mean, I feel like we share a lot of the same principles. We need to abstract away a lot of the complexity and the many steps that are in if anyone wants to buy an RWA. And I think that our design choice was to build our own blockchain so that we could take advantage of the IBC protocol, because I'm really wary of bridges that are using wrap tokens or elsewhere out there that might not be using as robust a security setup. I mean, whenever you hear about hacks, you usually hear about an Ethereum something getting hacked or whatever. And so we, of course, we embrace the Ethereum ecosystem. We have pools on Ethereum and PancakeSwap and Base, and I'm really excited of what Base is building. But I think, tapping into the IBC protocol, which has never been hacked yet, knock on wood, that was like something that we wanted to bring to this sort of liquidity matrix, if you will. As RWAs evolve, people will want to arbitrage across these different blockchains, and that brings liquidity and volume to all the players in the space. And, we should be able to facilitate that with really low gas fees and without fear of being hacked and not too much slippage. So I think cross-chain is key to that. And probably the most exciting things that have been built cross-chain for RWAs is CCIP from Chainlink, which then USDC took and created CCTP, I think is what it is. I get confused with my acronyms sometimes, but being able to move USDC from Ethereum to Base to Polygon to Noble and our ecosystem is really exciting because, as Bryan mentioned, if you use Base or USDC and this cross-chain transfer protocol, you can move value all across the world with very little gas fees and absolutely no slippage, and that's a game changer.
All right, thanks for answering that question, guys. I like the fact that you guys put out there that it's also the fact that you're able to move away from where you built on and actually build like an ecosystem where users can interact with different networks and really try to drive forward an expansive ecosystem. So now I guess that we kind of touched points on some of that topics. It naturally jumps into our second question over here, which is, in what ways does cross-chain compatibility contribute to market expansion and liquidity for real-world assets? But more importantly, maybe you guys can paint a picture for our audience for what this actually means for end users.
Sorry, Jim, you're sort of talking about full interoperability does mean for the end users. Is that right?
Yep. So how does cross-chain compatibility contribute to market expansion?
Yeah, I mean, so in I guess in the wish list or the end game for having full interoperability is that the users are moving their, at least focusing on real world assets around seamlessly, right? And there's no, can't go to this protocol or need to bridge to that token or need to buy it with this stable coin on this other protocol and all the fun stuff. So yeah, I think the simple answer is that you can buy and sell and move all these real world assets around between platforms, dexes, sexes, maybe protocols. But so we'll see how that pans out, because I'm not necessarily sure if we'll actually get to that end state. I mean, the concept of, I guess, the protocols differentiating themselves is that they do X, Y, Z better than, the other protocol, but maybe that they can still do that component. And then I do agree with one of the last statements. Like, I'm very anti-bridging and just because of the insane amount of hacks that go on. As soon as you add, extra layers of technology, even layer twos, like there's a whole new set of smart contracts. There's a whole new vulnerabilities that present themselves. So I think, somehow the industry needs to work out how to create the composability whilst like not increasing the vulnerabilities that clean out so many of the protocols. That's probably how I think about it.
Yeah, just to follow on there, Julian, I totally agree with you, and I think that's what, one of the things that Kima was built on is security first. So we don't employ any smart contracts, any oracles, any relayers. We don't mint and burn anything. So, it's really amazing what some of the technologies have been able to do up until this point. Like you mentioned CCIP the speaker before you and CCTP for Circle. But those are also smart contract based technologies that are prone to hack, and it's a huge attack vector. And so we at Kima have taken that completely out of there, so that everything that moves across the Kima chain, it doesn't move across the Kima chain. It goes from an on-chain native asset to an on-chain native asset on the other side. And so this is something that's pretty exciting. And what it means to me, like, I think about just like we're trying to open up this, let's say, this world of real world assets to maybe, the people or a more common man that, has $100 or $1,000 that wants to buy a T-bill or, wants to buy a Tesla stock, as a digital token. And imagine these people have these things, but then they can't sell them, or it takes 2 days to sell it, and they, the car breaks down, or they want to go out for a fancy graduation dinner or something. Like, to me, the real interoperability is when you can have this one asset here, and then if you want to move it into a cash kind of place like a USDC or USDT, you can instantly do that with one button, and then have that available to spend or to do whatever else you decide to do with it, because it's your money, it's your time, it's your effort, and you're trying to take advantage of this new thing, like access to all financial instruments through real-world assets, but you don't want it to hurt you when you need it the most, and so to me, that's what real interoperability means, is anyone, anywhere, anytime can gain access to instant liquidity on whatever it is they have. And, maybe that's a pipe dream and a long way off, but that's what we're trying to get to at Kima. And I think it's possible from a tech standpoint. So.
Yeah, that's certainly the goal. I mean, I think we should think about what blockchains would be the best blockchains of provenance, right? So where do these companies feel comfortable issuing their assets? And one thing is security. So you don't want to have too much stuff going on there, like with smart contracts, I guess, is one way to do it. The way that we do it is we have sort of a permissioned guard, which sort of a walled garden within a permissionless ecosystem. And so that's like how we solve for that. I mean, it's just a different way to protect the users. But I think another thing to consider is how do we onboard retail users, because that's a big, important fact for the distributors of these assets, right? The reason why they want to tokenize their assets is because they would get a market that they might not otherwise have, right? And then the flip side, for the retail users, they get access to an asset that they might not otherwise have access to. And so from that perspective, cross-chain is paramount, because what if, your portal that you're accessing your assets, or you manage your investments from, isn't integrated into the blockchain of provenance where that asset is issued. So therefore, we have to consider all of these cross-chain solutions and hopefully build them out in such a way where there's a minimum of risk. The other thing I would add on is, what if, the blockchain of provenance, like where you hold your, vault receipt token or something like this, is on one chain, but then the, say a perpetuals exchange that you might want to dabble on trading on is on another blockchain, and it would be great if you could earn yield on the collateral for that perpetuals exchange from the asset from a different blockchain. And so there are ways to do that with abstraction and whatnot, which I think is sort of the cutting edge here in RWA space.
All right, thanks for the input, guys. And I guess jumping into our third question here, I mean, I've been hearing about the applications and innovations of cross-chain compatibility and interoperability, as well as some of the vulnerabilities and the risks and the fears and the security. So my next question is, do you think cross-chain compatibility drives innovation and overall ecosystem growth? Or do you think it still has to work on a few things before we can see that progressing further?
I guess first thing, I think there was a comment just made about making sure retail investors can access real world assets, and that actually is one of the key value propositions of IXSwap. We started 3.5 years ago. We have a license that allows retail investors to invest $1 USDT, so to buy a real world asset token, not a utility token. So just to make that separation clear. On the token, even IXS token, they're utility tokens, even though the whole of the crypto space generally considers them RWA tokens. They're not actual real world asset tokens themselves. So the real world asset tokens being the tokenized treasuries, tokenized money market funds, tokenized real estate startups, they're typically, and I'm not sure if there's anyone else in the world, they're usually only available for accredited and institutional investors. So you actually have two different types of tokens being bought in the market. You have the RWA utility tokens available for everyone, people pumping them all day long, but they're not backed by anything because they're utility tokens. Then you have the real world asset security tokens, the debt and the equity tokens being bought by like the crypto hedge funds and the big investors. So that's just a distinction that I think everyone needs to know, because a lot of people do not understand what I kind of just said then. That being said, I think that retail access is key, and we've got it, and hopefully more people can get it together. Ultimately, technology is is evolving every single day, especially in this space. So I think that protocols are competing right now, right? Just like there's a natural competition. So I think that by the fact that a protocol in its main purpose is to issue, get as many people using it, issue every type of asset that you can, make it super easy, super fast, all those kinds of things, the fastest and the cheapest. Therefore, it would make sense that every protocol wants to be composable with as many other protocols as possible. So I think by the nature of that, what the purpose and point is of building and running a protocol, they were all going to try to push towards that because it makes them more valuable because then more people can use it. So yeah, my multi answer is the push for composability. I think is good and is natural. It's a natural and necessary fit for the product. Anyone that wants to build a walled garden will fail. That's why all the private blockchains have failed. R3, that was a consortium of 42 banks backed, built Corda, which was a private permission only blockchain, and it failed. And that's why you've got Larry Fink and can't remember the CEO, Franklin Templeton. They've been out there this year, starting probably Q4 last year, saying all real asset tokens should be built on public chains because that's where the innovation is. That's where all the digital assets are that matter. That's where everything integrates and interoperates with each other. And if you go issue your real assets on your own private chain, no one cares. So there's kind of some proof of what has happened in the past because the public chains have a lot more use, therefore everyone starts using them. So if these public chains can drive towards working with all the other ones, they'll get more users, and then they'll win that. They'll continue to be successful, as I say.
Yeah, as far as compatibility goes, from my standpoint, it's not necessarily driving innovation, I don't think, or the growth of the ecosystem. I think innovation drives innovation, right? And I think the famous saying is necessity is the mother of all invention, or something like that. And I think that's going to be the case here as well, right? Like, what's the end goal is to get more people to buy these assets and make them available to a wider array of people. And as one of the previous speakers said, to grow the market share of these people issuing these funds into markets possibly that they may not have ever been, and vice versa. So to me, compatibility and cross-chain sort of technology is just exactly that. It's a solution to a problem that we're already facing, and we haven't even really begun to scale with this technology, right? And so, imagine if we have 100 or 1,000 times the volume here. It just turns into chaos, and I don't think there's enough for everyone. So I personally believe that the compatibility will be driven by the innovation. So as we see higher yields on certain projects or investments or LTVs or however we want to measure it, I think that's what's going to draw the more and more people, more and more investment, and then that's where we're going to see the most innovative compatibility solutions, cross-chain solutions, on-chain to off-chain solutions, and the tech will really explode because it's really needed, and it's not quite there yet. And that's what Kima's trying to work on is exactly that, is just making sure that as this starts to scale, we are able to help with liquidity across chain and in and out of stables and things of that nature. So, yeah.
I think at Manager Chain, we run an incubator, and so we have right now 3 projects in our Hong Kong office, and we're working with them, from sort of seed to table and bringing them to market. And it's been interesting. Nearly all of them, to a T, have cited this BCG data from 2022, which identified the total expected market for tokenized assets on chain as being $16 trillion by 2030. And if you go and you look at that report, which you can find if you type in like BCG 2022 real world assets or something like that, tokenization probably, you'll see that actually that $16 trillion number is like the most conservative forecast from BCG. And it's actually probably going to be somewhere between 25 and 30 trillion on chain before 2030. So it's in the best interest of every single project to actually work with other projects, because right now is sort of the part of the evolution of RWAs is where it's growing, from, and Julian made a good point, like, if you invest in Ohm token or IX token or these other tokens, which are Ondo, which are RWA tokens, those are like RWA thematics, if you will. They aren't the actual real world assets themselves. But they ostensibly will govern or will help facilitate the governing of, or will help facilitate the liquidity for RWAs in the future. So obviously, like fighting between ourselves makes no sense here. We need to work with each other to create liquidity pathways between all the different projects and all the different chains, and make it easier for issuers to understand what it is when Larry Fink is talking about tokenizing on Ethereum, for example. It's very interesting. After Larry started talking about that, 6 months ago or whatever, the Fed commissioned a study to look at where they think where they think tokenized assets should reside, and they concluded as well that it doesn't make sense to permission the entire blockchain. It's really counterintuitive, because that obviously limits the liquidity. So the Fed itself is saying, hey, actually the best place to tokenize liquidity or to tokenize assets is on permissionless blockchains, so that you can accord the permissioning as needed at the smart contract level or at the token level. So I think that really opens up a huge design space for everyone collaborating, and they can just pick and choose whatever they're most comfortable with. And then it's up to us who are building front ends to sew that all together and make it simple for the retail user, and also sort of like, accredited investors who are, a couple $1 million or whatever, and even institutionals, they have no idea how to approach the space at this particular moment. And it's up to us to sort of build that today as we want to see it. And, I expect us to be setting the standard for, a new type of banking, essentially. Like look at how Bank of America's website is. It's still the same as it was in like 1999. We're 25 years into online banking, and it hasn't really changed. So it's time to update that system, which is the Coinbase motto these days.
All right, thanks for that wonderful answer. And I guess I'd like to touch points on three things that you guys said that really made and struck a chord with me, which is necessity is a driver for innovation, necessity to work together, and the necessity to cross-distribute audiences to push for more acquisitions, specifically retail acquisition. So I guess jumping into our last question here, what is it specifically that your protocol is working on that you think is driving towards a more cross-chain compatible RWA ecosystem?
Yeah. Well, we're adding another protocol with Base. Base is really interesting because Coinbase is one of our investors in our company, but Base is, I think, the only it's a layer 2 Ethereum. It's the only protocol that doesn't have its own token. Token as in utility token. That has obviously been the way that every other protocol has launched, right? Unless it was a private blockchain, which doesn't really count. But and then the reason I just say that out loud is because Coinbase is trying to build and wanted its own protocol. It doesn't have its own token, so it's basically being run and managed by Coinbase because Coinbase is trying to stitch it all up together, right? So it actually, from a composability thematic, that's exactly what they're trying to do for everything, right? For their users. There's 110, 120 million wallets now, 15,000 institutions, and they want to be able to say, if you want to issue your whatever, BlackRock, you want to issue your equity token, do it with us. You can use your Coinbase wallet. You can put it on our protocol. We run it. It's safe. It's not, whatever. It's got any issues. We don't have any incentivization issues, which is also a challenge, but because they don't have any of their own tokens. but essentially just stitching it all up together. So we're excited about that, but we're not married to any particular chain, because we want to be cross-chain, because we want to help as many assets as possible and work with as many protocols as possible. So it's an interesting time, because we had a lot of layer ones from last cycle before that have kind of disappeared, and then we have a bunch of new protocols coming, which would be interesting to see if they can take whatever's built on there. There was a lot of work done, but again, we see even on our other platform, InvestaX, we have Clayton, because that's big in the Korean market, which anyone outside Korea might have never heard of it, but that market, we've also got and we've got Ethereum, we've got Base there as well. We did Tezos, Algorand, and Hedera last cycle, but they never really got any real world assets issued. So, but we were happy to do that. There's another one out of Australia called Red Belly, XTC, that we're having discussions with as well. So, again, I think that ultimately, we want to be available for as many assets, therefore as locked into as many protocols. That's how we kind of think about it.
Yeah, very cool. So Kima is working on integrating as many chains as possible, and also working on on-chain to off-chain solutions. So right now we have 11 chains that are available through a single integration, and one of those is Bitcoin, Solana, and then mostly layer 1, layer 2 Ethereum EVM based chains. So we're pretty excited about that. We have Euro available through SEPA. We also have US dollar accounts available, so that you can literally send $100 from Solana USDC to a bank account and vice versa. So this is a pretty cool technology that we're pioneering as a sort of a direct on-off ramp without going through an intermediary, all on chain. And the way that works is through a pool that is controlled by the Kima blockchain, and the validators attest to the transactions. We're also building something that I think is pretty cool for the real world asset ecosystem, and we call that DVP, so delivery versus payment. So you have 10 of one thing and you want your customer to pay 1,000 USDT for it. You can set the transaction up and to where it's sort of like an atomic escrow, I like to call it. So there's no third party in the middle, but as the funds hit the pool on let's say the USDT on Tron or whatever, you can immediately release the real world asset on the chain that it's native on, and or on a chain that you have it on in a non-native way, or on a secondary or third chain. So we're trying to think of all the different ways that these things could work together, and provide the Kima SDK based solution to be able to take advantage of sort of all of these things that I've just mentioned. So that's what we're building. Our mainnet is going live in September, so we're still in the process of working with POCs on testnet, and pretty excited about the evolution of how our protocol, or our layer 1 is developing, because we're able to do some pretty interesting things that none of the other interoperability protocols are able to do. So it's an exciting time in this space, and we're definitely trying to drive towards a more cross-chain compatibility solution, and those are a couple of the ways that we're doing it.
I kind of missed the question. So I think the question is something like, what is your protocol or project doing towards cross-chain?
Yeah, that's right, Nicholas. Yeah.
Okay. For Mantra Chain, we're already on our token itself, which is, not necessarily, it isn't a real world asset, but it's already on Polygon, Binance, Smart Chain, Base, Ethereum. Then it'll be on our own blockchain by the end of the year. But I think, what's most important is like your bridge partners. So like we have a good relationship with Axelar. We're really excited about what they're building. They kind of have like this OFT type standard, which is what Layer 0 built, where like any token built on IBC can be transferred without having to wrap it to any other blockchain. We also have like a relationship with Picasso for bringing Solana assets into our ecosystem, and probably more importantly to export RWAs from our ecosystem out to Solana. And like I said, it really just depends on what the user wants and where the liquidity is. We have a partnership with Ondo to bring USDY, which is their tokenized treasury product, onto our chain. And what we've really been focused on a lot is real estate in the Middle East region. So our goal is to become the ledger of record for all real estate in the Middle East. And I think that's like a huge, not only just like, tokenizing loans and stuff like that, but actually putting the deed onto the blockchain. So that's like where we've been focusing on. There's lots of other things to focus on, lots of other projects in the works and whatever, but I think like for us, that's like the lowest hanging fruit, given, our team's capabilities and what they're good at. And that's what's really the best thing about RWAs is it's not just like real estate, it's not just treasuries, and it's not just, luxury goods online, but it's like IP and, small business loans, and it's, tokenized whiskey. Someone came in the other day to talk about. So, I mean, it's just such a vast open space, and I think we'll, eventually dive down and figure out who specializes in what. I mean, that's the nature of economics, right? Like as an industry evolves, people start to specialize. And if you look at the RWA value chain, KPMG has done a lot of good work in like identifying like who or what are the people across the value chain. So it's not just like the primary market distributors or the secondary market liquidity providers, but it's also the accountants and the tokenizers and the people who are putting the deals together. And there's just so many participants in this emerging value chain that it's amazing. Like projects will eventually settle into what they're best at, and that's how we reshape the world.
All right, thank you for that, Nicholas. And now we're finally nearing the end of our AMA. So before we end this, I would like to thank our audience again for coming in tonight and hearing about the importance of cross-chain compatibility for an expansive RWA ecosystem. And I'd like to thank our panelists once again, Julian, Kwan, Bryan Benson, and Nicholas Krapels for joining us tonight. Maybe you guys would want to say a few goodbyes or words for your audience before we officially end this AMA.
Yeah, thanks, Gene. Great job hosting, and thanks to the other guys and all the audience for the guys for sharing all their insights, and for all the audience for joining. I think I've been saying for a very long time, Gene would know, but the real world asset industry is really taken off in 2024. It has been going for about 5 or 6 years. Most people wouldn't know that, but there's been a lot of work. It's a lot more exciting than ever before because we've got a lot more issuances sort of on chain. We have all the different use cases and commodities and startups and private equity and ESG and carbon credits and financial instruments and private credit and debt. And every single industry is moving towards that because digitization, tokenization serves this huge use case for all these different types of industries. And so what it means is, and what's important is that go and buy your RWA tokens, or what you think might be in terms of IXS, Ondo, etc. They are meant to benefit from the growth of the platforms, but to actually go and find real world asset tokens that you can buy is what you should be doing, because you want to start building out your portfolio. You need to be learning, understanding, just like crypto. You have to get started. You have to work it out. How does this platform work? How do these wallets work? What's this RWA? How do whiskey tokens work? How does real estate tokens work? And it's just so expansive that you'll never ever get all the answers. But my point is, everyone has a chance now to kind of almost front run the institutions like retail did in crypto, right? So one of the big advantages of cryptocurrency investing or gambling, whatever people want to call it, was for the first early stages, because remember, Bitcoin's 2008, so it's many, many years since it began. but for a very long time up in whatever called the ETF, institutional involvement in crypto, everyone could go and buy crypto before these guys, right? And so we're having a similar moment, but the real world asset space is much bigger and broader than crypto because real world assets in the trillions and trillions. But everyone has a chance to start getting started and start investing and becoming and building their knowledge and their portfolios. Again, as you know, Larry Fink and his crew comes in, but they're the first. The rest of the TradFi is still way behind. So I encourage everyone to sign up on platforms. IXSwap allows everyone to buy real world assets, equity tokens, debt tokens, one USDT, one USDC, whatever, with a photo ID. And go and check out the other speakers' platforms, protocols, and just get started and start putting some money to work and start learning and start getting ahead of everybody else in the space. Thanks, Gene.
Yeah, that's great advice, Julian. And I just want to echo your sentiment. Super grateful for you guys having us on here, and thanks to Nicholas and Gene for hosting. My sort of parting words would be just, I think even if we do a tenth of what is projected by BCG or McKinsey or whatever these giant numbers in the trillions are, we're still going to need a lot of work on infrastructure. And I think I'm really, really excited about how many different really capable and smart individuals, companies, organizations are building in this space. I think from your corporates to your giant financial groups to your startups, there's really an amazing amount of talent in this space. And we're just excited to support that in any way that we can at Kima. We think, that there's going to be a huge need for what we're building. And so we're excited about the future. But, I'd like to, just close with, first of all, thanking IXSwap, thanking, Mantra and the other teams that are on here, and, opening up myself to any other questions, comments that there may be. We'd love to keep these conversations going. So, thanks to everyone, and have a good rest of your week.
To close, I'll say that I got into this space through trying to complete a PhD on Chinese monetary policy. Then I found out that the central bank was actually looking at blockchain as a way to be the ledger of record for their currency. I thought that was surprising to me because I had only heard of it in relation to Bitcoin. And fast forward a few years after that, I started to explore what I wanted to be involved with building in blockchain, and it always came back to this idea of security tokens, or what are now called RWAs. And the reason for that is twofold. The first is, if you look at what's going on in TradFi, it's obviously a better way to assign holders of the holder of record, because everything that is wrong with TradFi, like with what Roaring Kitty is going through with GameStop and whatever, the reason for that is because settlement times are T+2. I mean, now they're T+1, but for the longest time they've been T+2. But they shouldn't be T+2. They should be instant, or as close to instant as we can, accommodate while also being compliant. It's just obvious that that's a much better way to do it. So I think that, you should get involved with building this stuff and getting involved with teams that are trying to build the future here, because that's obviously a so much better system. And the second reason why I'm so excited about the future of RWAs is because, as a hobby, I guess I'm a crypto degenerate. I like to invest in, some of these more speculative coins. But what is always terrible about that is the volatility, going up and going down, and seeing your net worth 10x, then not go down 80% all the time. And I believe that a lot of the reason why that occurs is because it's just simply too hard to cross what I call the blood-brain barrier from crypto back to TradFi. In other words, you know in your heart of hearts that you want to take profits, but then you just convince yourself, well, what else am I going to put it in? and I don't want to just put it in USDC or USDT. I'll get killed by inflation. And the answer to that is putting real world assets on this side of the ledgers, on the tokenized side of the ledger, so that you can flow from your sort of speculative coins when there are bull markets to your protective coins, so like a tokenized treasury or a real estate vault or something like this. And the only way that's going to happen is if we let 1,000 flowers bloom or 100,000 flowers bloom. We need these projects that bring uncorrelated yield, so that not only can you protect your gains, your crypto gains, from the volatility of crypto, especially in a bear market, but also you can beat inflation. And I think those two powerful things, like the ability to settle almost instantaneously and the ability to maintain your assets on chain, so that you don't have to deal with governments snatching your money if that's what they believe, or you don't have to deal with, if you decide to move from one country to another, you can take your wealth with you. And you can stay on chain and be earning. I mean, these are very powerful concepts that I think will change how people personally manage their finances. I'm very excited to be involved with MantraChain, and thank you, Julian and Bryan. Very encouraged to hear about your guys' projects tonight on this AMA. And thanks for inviting me.
All right. Thank you, Nicholas, for those final words. And thank you again to our panelists for engaging discussion tonight, and to everyone else that tuned in. That officially ends our AMA for today. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening or day. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gene.
Bye-bye.